GLP-1 receptor agonists are a class of drugs we're going to be seeing a lot more of, increasingly in the next years and decades. They are going to change a lot. And I will leave it to the other channels to talk about the full consequences of all that. I'm more interested just in the question of, like, if you have the hobby of enjoying fine alcohol, say fine spirits, what is this going to do to your enjoyment and your ability to drink and taste these things? And I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want to cheerlead these things either. None of those seem appropriate over my cup of coffee here. No, I just want to try to get some facts in the ground and draw the conclusions that I can to kind of get the information out there. And I guess the preliminary answer to that question is, well, it might make your taste worse. It might make you enjoy them a little bit less, or drink a little bit less at least, but you probably won't notice. Let's dive into this. Okay, so GLP-1 receptor agonists, belovedly called the GLPs by my wife. Where do these things come from? Okay, GLP-1 is a hormone. It stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. Because hormones have, very vivid names like that. This stuff was discovered in kind of the early to mid 80s. And it's a hormone that is kind of has receptors all over the body. And it's receptors that are really important. It's receptors that are important, and it's the hormone that kind of zaps the receptors. And when you zap these receptors, there are a ton of effects that happen because these things are all around the body. But the big ones that happen are systemic regulation of blood sugar levels, release of insulin, all that stuff. Another effect is a signal sent to the stomach to slow gastric emptying. Another effect is a signal sent to the brain to effectively discourage the sensation of hunger and provide a sense of fullness, if you like. Now, ever since this hormone was discovered, there was some interest in maybe synthesizing it for medical purposes, because that sounds useful for treating diabetics, for treating people with obesity issues. The problem is that actual GLP-1, the hormone itself, does not stick around in the bloodstream very long. It's metabolized very quickly, so it makes it very difficult to use at a medical level, and you just want to be pinning people every couple of hours. Enter the Gila monster. Independent research into Gila monster venom discovered a substance, a compound, that sticks around metabolically way, way, way longer than GLP-1 itself, but still hits the GLP-1 receptor, still has all of those effects I just talked about. And the discovery of this, I can't remember it, but the Gila monster venom compound sort of spurred off this entire wave of research, the results of which we are just now beginning to see. So, lesson number one, footnote number one, I should say. Anytime a hack goes on TV and says we need to cut research, and does it by providing examples of research projects that sound, ridiculous, remember that probably the most important new class of drugs for a generation came out of research on Gila monster venom. All right, moving on. So we're just starting to get GLP-1 agonist drugs on the market now. And these are drugs that zap that receptor I talked about and have those effects that I talked about. So blood sugar regulation and basically providing sense of fullness. Those have started to hit the market, and usually under different names depending on what they're being prescribed for, which can make it confusing. So they're being prescribed for type 2 diabetes and for basically weight loss. I'm going to concentrate on the weight loss side of things with this video because it's probably going to be more relevant to most of you. So yeah, these are drugs where the main intended effect is to make you lose weight. You lose weight when you take them. And the downstream effects of those things are reduced blood pressure, better cholesterol numbers, better insulin sensitivity. We could go down a list, all of which are super duper good things, but they're all just kind of downstream effects of good old fashioned weight loss. Now, so you or someone you know may be taking these things or considering them. Now we should talk a little bit about side effects, because I think at this point most people do report some kind of side effects. They can range from feeling a little upset in your tummy to like full blown dizziness and vomiting, because this is a very, very old, powerful hormone pathway. So that stuff can happen. There's a couple of things to be aware of with the sides, and there's also how do I put this? Not so much official sides, but the culturally recognized side effects. Ozempic butt, for example. So we should talk about that too. First thing to know is that the current drugs that are out there are almost certainly going to be the dirtiest and most side effect prone of any of this class of drugs that we're going to see. Because there's a zillion of these things in the pipeline, and I can guarantee you the vast majority are going to work better and be less sides prone than what is out there currently. So if you're kind of leery right now, give it a couple of years. I guarantee there'll be something better. So put that out. The other thing is, if the doctor you're working with, and you should be working with a doctor, some kind of medical professional for these things, if you're working with a doctor, they should be titrating up your dose of your GLP, whatever your GLP may be, over the course of weeks. You shouldn't get a strong dose right away. They should be upping it in order to test effectivity and basically to test your tolerance for side effects. And the idea would be to get a dose that is effective, that does what it needs to do, but also doesn't make you feel awful. So that is an important part of the process. Is don't go for a strong ass dose right away. The third thing would be, and this relates to the Ozempic butt, Ozempic face stuff, just understanding what these drugs do in terms of weight loss. These are not calorie burners. They're not fat burners. It's not cocaine, right? This is not amphetamine. It just makes you feel less hungry, and so you eat less. That is what they do. It is a medically induced diet. That is all that's happening. And so it's giving you a kind of a calorie deficit, because you're just not eating those extra calories, and that is a diet. But like any diet, there's questions of how to control or what the quality of the diet and weight loss looks like. So Ozempic butt and Ozempic face are really just badly managed weight loss diet butt and face. Like that, you get that anytime someone does a weight loss diet that is just badly set up and organized. So if you want to avoid those things, it's pretty simple. You just eat some more dietary protein, a little bit more if you're it depends on the situation. If you're jacked, you need a lot more. If you're not jacked, if you don't have a whole lot of muscle, a little bit more, and then go and hit the gym. for full body basic resistance training once a week. That'll probably do it. A little more dietary protein, a little more lifting heavy things, and you've avoided Ozempic butt. Congratulations. But also, more than that, so it's an appetite suppressant, basically, right? So I haven't even gotten to the research paper, and we're already 10 minutes in, Jesus. So, if you're taking what most people are eating on a daily basis, and you're just cutting off 10 to 20% of that. I mean, most people are already not getting barely getting enough water and fiber and nutrient-rich vegetables on a daily basis. So if you're cutting off 10 to 20% of that, you're going to have issues in terms of health, and also just in terms of keeping stuff moving down there, especially when you're taking a drug that is going to slow gastric emptying. So what you can do is just, as Dan John says, eat like a grown-up. So try to have an extra glass of water or two every day, eat some extra fiber, eat some extra colorful vegetables. That's it. On top of that, this will probably become obvious the first time you do it. Avoid eating food that's just really heavy. Will improve some of the side effects you will tend to see. Like the kind of meal you would eat that would already make you go lie down is going to be that much worse when you are on a GLP. And what I mean is, a big plate of lasagna, it's delicious. It will move at a glacial pace once it hits the pit of your stomach. So don't do that. So that's pretty simple. Like, just if you want to improve the quality of your weight loss diet when you're taking, of your weight loss when you're taking your GLP-1 drug, just make a couple of basic changes. Eat a little bit more protein. Go lift heavy things once a week is probably enough. Drink some more water. Eat some more fiber. Eat some more colorful vegetables. Avoid super duper heavy meals. That will make it a much better experience overall with kind of better results. So yeah, that's but you take the stuff and it's basically taking care of the dieting calorie deficit side for you. Now, but those aren't the only side effects, are they? One interesting fact, which is probably on balance a good thing, is when people are on these drugs, they have less inclination to drink alcohol. And I understand that. Like, if you're kind of in a permanent place where you're halfway towards having gorged yourself on Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, where that's your mindset, drinking a 65% bourbon or something is probably one of the last things you want to do. It's probably just a little bit less appealing. But that might be a problem. Like, if you just happen to enjoy drinking fine spirits or something as a hobby. I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem because, we don't encourage binge drinking on this channel. That's not what we do. We drink good stuff in moderate amounts, which is going to get me in trouble when I have to actually start working through some of the backlog of bottles that I have sitting back there. But another side effect might be the effect on sensation itself, the effect of taste and smell. And that is weirdly something that hasn't really been studied a lot. And until I finally found this paper, which just, I think, March, hit the journal Physiology and Behavior, volume 291. And the title sounds very, very bad. You dig into the details and it gets more complicated, but let us work through this because I think it's a really interesting study. It's called GLP-1 Receptor Agonists Significantly Impair Taste Function. It's a study by Rafa Khan and Richard L. Doty. both from the University of Pennsylvania. Interesting. So there is sensory testing going on here, and one of the authors is actually the person selling the sensory tests. So there's a little self-dealing going on here, but never mind. Let us move on. Let me tell you about this study. I'm going to read selected parts of it because I think there's interesting and important stuff you can take away. All right. I'm just going to read what I think should maybe be the headline. The present case control study employed state-of-the-art quantitative psychophysical tests. They're not that state-of-the-art. To assess the impact of GLP-1 agonists on human taste and smell function in individuals using such agonists for weight control. Important. This is not diabetics. This is just people taking it for weight control. Sexist differences were examined in light of evidence that men and women differ in many of their responses to GLP-1 agonists. The olfactory test employed 40 odorant test items, whereas the taste test employed 53 test items, including repeated measures of 4 different concentration doses of sucrose, sweet, citric acid, sour, caffeine, which is very, very bitter, sodium chloride, salt, and monosodium glutamate, MSG, so savoriness, umami. Skip a little. The participants were, I'll just read a little bit of the methods, because I want you to get a sense of what they were actually doing in this. The participants were 46 healthy adults who were currently taking GLPs for weight loss, and 46 controls who were not taking GLPs. 62 women total and 30 men. Controls were individually matched to the GLP participants on the basis of age, sex assigned at birth, smoking behavior, and COVID-19 infection histories. And they recruited the GLP folks from advertisements on Reddit and Facebook, and the controls were pulled from a different study. Okay, skip down a little bit. So the taste function, I don't want to read all this. Okay, so the taste test they were using there is a 53-item waterless empirical taste test, or WET with 2 T's. A test designed to measure subjects' ability to identify various concentrations of taste stimuli with a minimum number of trials. What are these? These are plastic strips with the mentioned things on them. And people put them in their mouth, and they swab them around, and they report, what they tasted. Smell function was tested using a 40 odorant University of Pennsylvania smell identification test. SIT. Okay, so it's booklets, and it's basically scratch and sniff booklets. You open the things up. There's a little thing. You scratch it with the tip of a pencil. You smell it, and you answer a multiple choice thing about what you smelled or if you smelled anything. Okay, so this is what they were doing. They gave these tests to these people. You had your GLPs group and your control group. What happened? Let me talk about smell first. They talk about taste first. I want to talk about smell because not much happened. Although the UPSIT scores, that's the smelling test, were nominally lower among the GLPs group on average. This difference did not reach the 0.05 level of statistical significance, and the test scores generally fell within normative normal limits. Women on average had higher scores than men, independent of the study group, which is just normal. I mean, women always just have better objective sensory capability than men. Sorry, dudes. Smell. Slightly affected, very slightly affected in terms of people's objective ability to identify smells, but not that much. So that's the first result. Smell didn't seem to do much. Taste. I'm going to go back up a little bit. The total 53-item WET with 2 T's test scores were markedly and significantly lower in the GLP-1 agonist group than in the matched controls. This phenomenon was consistent, with 85% of the GLP-1 subjects performing worse than their individually matched control. Independent of study groups, the test scores of women were higher than those of men. So again, And then I'm going to read a bit from the conclusion related to this. This study demonstrates for the first time that GLPs negatively impact the functioning of a major sensory modality, which in this case, taste. Not smell, but definitely taste. Thus, objectively measured, I should mention, I'm reading from the white paper, the paper pre-publication. They may have changed some things in when it actually went into the journal, but I can't access that PDF, so you're getting the white paper. Objectively measured taste test scores were decreased for all 5 basic taste qualities. So, sweet, sour, salty, umami, bitter. They were all down for GLPs folks. This reduction has profound theoretical implications for dietary choices, nutrition, and metabolic health, and extends our understanding of the physiological impact of GLP-1 to the human body. And then they speculate a little bit on why this might be and on the location of receptors and stuff. Importantly and somewhat paradoxically, it demonstrates that the ability to smell is not markedly influenced by these drugs, despite the impact of the olfactory system on the perception of food flavor. Aside from the basic taste qualities of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and brothy, savory, umami, all other so-called taste sensations depend upon volatiles reaching the olfactory receptors from the oral cavity via the nasal pharynx. Put a pin in this. Thus, such common taste qualities as apple, anise, banana, chocolate, coconut, coffee, garlic, lemon, peach, peanut, and strawberry depend solely on the olfactory system, not on the taste system, and appear to be intact in persons using GLP-1 RAs. I'll come back to that in a second. Let's see. Oh, and beyond just an inability for people to objectively identify these basic taste sensations, some people had what they're calling chemosensory distortions and other sensations not measured in the study, because there was a common section they put in their tests. I'm going to read. For example, one subject noted that red meats and fish taste awful, milk and milk products taste off. Another reported everything is overly sweet or overly sour, and things leave a sour paste taste in my mouth. I was a Coke drinker since high school, but now I never crave it, and it's too sickly sweet for me. Involvement of texture was suggested by one participant who stated, I am more sensitive to food textures. Scrambled eggs are intolerable, and red wine tastes like an ashtray. 21.7% of the participants indicated that the flavor of food was altered. So they're making note of this happening, but notice that number. You're talking about less than a quarter of people, 22% basically of people reported these kinds of alterations of flavor. And some of them may be just like picking out the major ones in their comments. I would love to see the raw data on all this. And then there's some weird stuff. A lot of this is already kind of weird. Like, who knew that GLP-1 receptor agonism would result in not being able to taste stuff as well? But then it gets even more weird. Because guess who among the GLP-1 group did the best on these tests? Because remember, it's 85% did worse. There was a cohort that did okay. Let me read this, because this is great. Except for the... wait. So they mention... I'm sorry, I cut off an important context for this quote. Wet and upset stores, this is the test they're using again, mean scores were higher for those experiencing drug-related symptoms, drug-related side effects. The more you had side effects, the better your test scores were. The differences in upset scores for 4 of the 6 symptoms were statistically significant, as compared to only 2 of the symptoms for the wet. For both modalities, the strongest associations appear to be symptoms with direct associations to vagal responses. Vagal. So, nausea, systematic stuff, nausea, dizziness, the bad stuff. It is, and then I'll read a bit from the conclusion. It is remarkable that those participants who reported GLP-related non-chemosensory side effects had better smell and taste function as measured by the up, sit, and wet than those not reporting such side effects. The reason for this is not clear, but these findings emphasize the close association of the senses of taste and smell with the autonomic nervous system. It is possible that those who are more sensitive to taste and smells are also more sensitive and hence more susceptible to vagal-related autonomic responses. Additionally, individuals with higher baseline sensory acuity may be more likely to notice changes induced by GLP-related treatment. Such observations suggest that inherent perceptual capabilities may modulate the propensity for GLP-1 side effects. The better you are at sense. So in any case, there's a correlation, a statistically significant correlation between having pretty good objective sensory capability and getting GLP side effects. I am not enough of a biochemist to speculate on what might be going on there, but it's really, really interesting. There's more weirdness going on. Let me read this bit. So again, people do worse in terms of sensory perception when they're on GLPs. They just do, particularly in taste, a little bit in smell, but not very much. Let me read this. The total 53-item wet test scores were markedly and significantly lower in the GLP-1 agonist group than in the matched controls, with 85% of the scores falling below those of their individually matched controls. Nonetheless, despite the ubiquity of the taste loss, most of the participants were unaware of their dysfunction. They didn't know this was happening. This is back in that was from the conclusion. This is back a little bit earlier. Although most GLP-1 RA participants scored below their individually matched controls, the majority of scores fell within general normal limits. This is reflected by the number of the GLP-1 participants who self-reported no change in their taste function. Less than 25% reported noticing a drug-related decline in sensation, with the remainder reporting drug-related improvement. So these people, in general, you saw a drop in taste sensitivity, but people didn't see it that way. The majority of people, we're talking, like 70% of people, actually thought that their sensory perception improved since they got on these drugs, which is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, all this is really, really interesting, and I'm fascinated by it. And that's it for my coffee. So, takeaways from all this. If you go on GLP-1 drugs, the very strong likelihood is that your sensory capabilities, particularly taste, are going to crash a little bit. One of the strengths of this study is they were only checking for people who were otherwise healthy. There's no diabetics in this group. They're trying to match with controls as best they can. So it seems pretty. I want to see more research. I was going to see more research, but it seems pretty conclusive just looking at this, that everyone saw a drop in raw capacity to taste stuff. But and that will probably happen to you if you go on these things. But there's a couple of things to be aware of. As they note, taste is not just about sort of taste sensation. A lot of it is smell in your mouth, if you like. And that seems to still be kind of unaffected. Right? So a lot of the notes we enjoy in a good spirit are really about those other things and not sort of about those base taste sensations. So you're still going to get those. And even if other tastes are affected, be aware you can still enjoy the smell of these things at least. So that's something. Another thing is to think about. Even if you do get this taste degradation, the odds are very, very good, like 70% plus, that you won't actually notice it. So it may not matter. Like, you've got a class of people reporting those kind of sensory distortions, but it's still not a majority. It's less than 25%. So the odds are in your favor that even if you're not going to be tasting as well, you're just still going to be able to just enjoy whatever it is that you're pouring for yourself. Third thing to take away. If you know, I guess this is a warning, if you happen to know that you are an exceptionally sensitive taster, and that's not me, by the way. Like, I've had a lot of practice. I've had years of forcing myself to write out tasting notes and stuff. But, I'm not a super taster. I'm not particularly sensitive in any way. But if you are, expect worse side effects from GLP-1 agonist drugs. I don't know why, but that seems to be where the data are pointing. Another thing. So there is a small group of people where this is going to be a big problem. And those are people whose careers kind of depend on sensation. So if you are a buyer for a retail store or a distributor, and you're looking into getting on these drugs, for the sake of your career, you may need to reconsider. You may need to find something else. But that's not everyone. Because, and this is, I guess, maybe the last takeaway, even in the worst case, if your career doesn't depend on it, if nothing else depends on it, even in the worst case, high side effects, sensory distortion, not being able to enjoy your favorite bottles of spirit in the same way, even in that worst case, it might still be worth it for health benefits. These drugs are showing less, even this generation, which again is not going to be the best, these drugs are showing something like a 15 to 20% weight loss for people on them. That's huge. And it's just going to kind of get better as better drugs roll out. So, it's not just about. Sometimes it's not just about being able to break out a nice bottle and pour it and enjoy it. Sometimes it's about your health. Sometimes it's about, all the things connected to your health, your family, to go back, your career. If your career is not, being a buyer for a major store or a spirits reviewer. And you got to think about that too. So, it's all this stuff is weird. The science is still coming in. But I hope this is helpful for you in thinking about these things. Another issue, which I don't even know if I can begin to tackle here because it's too much of an issue, is if you are in the business, what kind of effect is this going to have? Because again, these drugs seem to discourage people drinking alcohol, which on the whole is probably a good thing. But, what effect is that going to have if you were in the business of selling wine, beer, spirits, whatever it may be? What happens? What happens with all this? I don't know. I will be paying attention. And thanks for watching. I will link up this paper down below, the official published version and also the white version. Again, don't take it as a fear-mongery thing. It's just science. Science done by people who look like they're trying to sell sensory tests, but science. And pay attention to the facts and make your own decisions based on them, objectively, with consideration of what your interests are. Thank you for watching, and cheers.